I'm really happy to be here and especially kind of introducing the brilliant presentations of Rowan and Andre. I'm going to try to make a general presentation on relationship between wine blogging and e-commerce, and especially how producers and consumers can engage through e-commerce platform. Oh, it works. The situation of e-commerce kind of changed over the years. I'm sure that you noticed that. Until, I would say, 2000, e-commerce platforms were strictly for sale. They were presenting you wines with various prices and styles, and you were making your choice as a consumer. Then, in the beginning of our new millennium, which I would say, we had more and more user content generated e-tail, e-commerce sites. And they were, at the beginning, powered by wine blogging. So a different kind of conversation happened between producers, consumers, and e-tailers. For very, very long, as you know, the conversation was business to consumers, but now this is over. So a new type of conversation happened. First, consumers to consumers. And I think that was really what was new in the e-tail business. Then there was consumers to bloggers. Consumers were reading blogs, and studies showed that they were trusting what bloggers were saying about wines. And then consumers started talking directly to businesses, to wine producers. And I think this is the third channel that is a little of a problem, you know. I'm not sure producers are really talking to their consumers. And I'd like to, along with this presentation, try maybe to address the situation and suggest a few lines of thoughts for everybody. I based my line of thoughts on what Jake McKee called the 90.9.1 principle. What is it? It means that 90% of people on the net are, in fact, the audience. They don't really participate. They listen, they read, and that's about it. Then you have 9% of editors. Those are the people who are trying to interact with the other actors on the web, whether they are consumers, producers, e-tailers. And then you have the 1% of creators. And those creators are wine bloggers, e-tailers, and everybody creating content. On the other hand, there are some nuances when I say that 90% of the people on the internet are audience. This is what Charlene Lee, who is an American marketer, calls the engagement pyramid. And I totally agreed with the first 4 levels, but I disagreed with the last one, so that's why I kind of tried to change the pyramid. I'm not a graphist or an art designer, so sorry for the crooked look. So the first 4 levels are interesting because they show, in fact, different level of interaction between people. You have people who are just watching. You know, they just think that they're on the net, they're looking for information, they're watching videos. They don't feel like they want to talk to people. But then, oops, sorry, how do I get back? Like this? Okay, yeah. Then you have people who are sharing, and that's if you are wine bloggers or e-tailers, you can have people who are going just to make a comment, you know, saying, people who are sharing, they're going to forward a comment, they're going to forward a video, they're going to post a link on something. So that's all they're going to do. Then you have the third level, which is commenting. It's a little more engagement on the part of people. They're going to comment on your blog, they're going to make tasting notes on your wines, and they're going to comment on the videos, you know, maybe say, oh, it's a great video, I love it, or I was there and I can attest it is a great place. And then you have people who are going to produce. So not only are they going to, they're going to comment, they're going to post tasting notes, they're going to start a conversation maybe on the net, on a wine blog, on the blog of an e-commerce site. So with all those levels, people are engaged in conversation on the net. But how does it really work? Is it really efficient? That's what I'm going to try to go through. Now we have what I called the new e-communication game. We are all, you know, when you spend a day on the internet, you go through all stages. Sometimes you're just going to read, or you're just going to post a link, or you're just going to post a comment. So what we have to try to see is how the conversation really happens. And we can find that with new types of e-tailers who all have blogs, who have tasting notes by consumers, who sometimes have their own producers posting on the site. And so these new types of e-tailers creates a new types of conversation or monologue. Because, you know, sometimes you have the feeling you're just reading monologues. So you have the consumers' blogs, people who love to share their tasting note on their own platform. You have what we call marketing agents' blogs, which means, you know, people like me who are communicators and marketers in the wine business. And you have the e-tailers' blog and the wine social networks. You have now also all the mobile platforms. You can access a tasting note or a site from your mobile constantly. You know, when I'm in the US, I don't see that so much in Europe, but when I'm in the US, when I'm standing in the supermarket in the wine section, you see very often people who are with their iPhone looking for tasting notes on a wine before they buy it. It's going to happen more and more. And you also have now the 2D tags on wines. And we also have technology developed by Andre, but he'll talk about it. So I think now we really have a fundamental shift in e-communication and e-commerce. So e-tailers, to me, are very much the new marketing vehicles. Well, I put a question mark because I've been challenged on that, and you're welcome to challenge me. I'm not going to talk about Naked Wines or Adega because it's going to be done. So that's why I chose another site, which is winessoldout.com. So this is a site that has a limited quantity of wines, and they offer it for sale on their website until it is sold. When it's sold out, too bad, that's it. And you'll see that here they offer a 65% discount on a bottle of wine. And it's going to be, they have this limited amount of wine, and they're going to sell it until there is no more. Another thing is create a community for the customers. And snooze.com is a good example of that. This is really a typical new generation social media e-tailer site. You can comment, you can add wines, and you have your own little world, you know, called you. And in that section, you have your friends, you can add friends. You know, it's a little like Facebook. You find like-minded people, and you share the wines you tasted, and you share your wine experience. And snooze.com is also an e-commerce platform through a bunch of partnerships with various either wine merchants or other e-commerce websites all over the US. It's mostly in the US for the moment. Okay. So this is a good, we have now a different way of connecting brands and consumers. Not only blogs, but Facebook, Twitter, and so on. So I made here a quick kind of table of different wineries who are connecting through blog, Facebook page, Twitter, or newsletter. So now I'm going to finish up with that because I think it's important. We know that most of the time the consumers are listening and engaging in conversations. I talked to Paul Mabray in the US, and he created Groovy, which covers over 130,000 social media sites with over 1,200,000 social media users' profiles. And he showed that between January 2010 and June 11, 2010, there was an average of new daily conversation of 9,000. So over 9,000 daily conversation on wine, only on a few social networks. So now, big question is who is talking to who? So consumers are talking to consumers, we saw it. Consumers are listening to consumers, and consumers are talking to producers through e-tailers. My question is, are wine producers listening and answering? I'm not sure, and I think that's where maybe wine producers have to be a little more proactive and try to be a little more aware of all those conversations going on the net, and try to go on all those sites, talk to their consumers. E-tailers, e-commerce sites are a big way for wine producers to really engage in conversation with their consumers.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Andre. I'm one of the co-founders of Adega and the Avian. And what I'm going to talk about today is about social commerce. And just to go directly to straight to the point, what is social commerce? A very easy way to explain what social commerce is to imagine that you would put on the same sites Facebook and Amazon. So you basically bring all your friends from Facebook, and they help you buy on something where you usually, or somewhere where you usually buy, like Amazon. So basically that's social commerce. That's having help from friends deciding what to buy. In the wine world, what's already happening online is that people are looking for wine recommendations online. Before they used to have, and they still do, but it's changing slightly, but they used to have only magazines, they used to have a few critics deciding what would be the recommended wines. Now, online is increasingly being a place where people look for recommendation. But what's also happening about that is that they can not only get an opinion and a recommendation online, but they can also get an opportunity to add their own view. And because they're able to do that, then they're able to influence other people on the wine choices that they're going to do in the future. To give you an idea of what kind of sites where this is happening already, probably most of you use Facebook and some of you use Twitter. So you know how many links and how many posts on Facebook you've seen from people saying, I've just bought this, I really like that. So that's an indication that in a way you're being influenced on what kind of things you would like to buy in the future. And this is more of a kind of a general network that everyone uses. Then we go deeper into wine sites. And when you go into wine sites, you have some older sites like the wine forums. You have some new things like the wine blogs, and we're here to talk about that too. And interestingly, there's quite an interesting level of discussion on food sites. Apart from that, and that's what I'm going to explain today, you have a couple of sites that bring that social layer to this new thing called social commerce. And you have a few examples, Adega, that I'm going to talk about. Seller Tracker, which is one of, if not the biggest online wine community. And you have Vino Gusto, which is a very interesting European project. Also, Rowan will be able to talk about that better. But as a retailer, he's one of the excellent examples of how a retailer can also include wine recommendations from other people that may become your friends or just people you trust online. So basically, I'm going to talk about the two projects, the Avin and Adega. To explain the Avin, I'm going to go back to an analogy of most of you have bought books, and books have this code when you open them. They have a code called the ISBN, which is a code that identifies each book uniquely. What we've developed while developing the other project is, Adega, what we developed was a system to uniquely identify a wine by its name and by its vintage. And this brought a bunch of interesting things to this online world. In one level, it's now easier to share information between sites. And this is a way for, imagine you're exchanging information about a wine with a name from a country you don't easily recognize. If you can use a number to identify that wine specifically, then you have lots of other, you don't get data errors that you would normally get in that situation. But more importantly than that, this kind of code, as I will show in the next few slides, is a code that can help consumers get more information about the wine that they are about to try or that they are about to buy. So this is a code that is not only to be used online, but also to be used offline, has a tool for consumers to get more information about the wines that you see out there. Just to give you also a slight idea of uses and what kind of usage the Avin is getting right now, we have right now around 25 million labels being printed with an Avin on the back label of the wine. And we have all these examples of not only wineries, but also wine guides and wine regions and some wine events using the code has their unique identification for their wine. I'll show now when I talk about Adega, I'll show another example that brings this even closer to the consumers who can really benefit from this kind of technology. So, talking about Adega, Adega is basically a social network for wine lovers. It's a place where people go to share their tasting notes and to talk about the wines that they like, to talk about their favorites, and to get wine recommendations from other people. I normally use the word Facebook or the sentence Facebook for wine to describe Adega because it's very easy. 500 million people use Facebook, so it's pretty easy to try to, not in size, but in concept, to try to explain what Adega is. But we have much more than that, and I'll show you that in a minute. So this is the most important thing that happens on Adega, is people having a conversation about the wines that they like and about the wines that they want to buy. So every time anyone adds a tasting note on Adega, there's a comment box, and you can immediately comment on that tasting note or whatever comment the person reviewing the wine did, and you can get all sorts of interesting information based on that. Because Adega is something that it now has 7 different languages. We had an interesting problem at some point where a tasting note was being written in Portuguese or French or Spanish, and someone, for example, in America couldn't understand the tasting note. So we added this interesting mechanism where if you're reading a tasting note in French, you can use this translator, automatic translator, that of course it doesn't translate the notes exactly as it is, but it gives you a good idea what kind of wine you're going to get. So, and this slide is probably one of the most important of the presentation because it shows exactly what is supposed to happen in this kind of networks. The conversation is what drives people to trust other people, and in the end to trust their wine recommendations. A few of the stats of where Adega is right now. We have 25 wines on the database. It's a database that prides itself of the quality. We're definitely not the biggest database on the market, but we're one that cares about the quality, so we don't have that many duplicates, and we're always trying to fix any problems with the kind of information that we have. And then also a way to show what kind of activity we have on the site. We have over 50,000 activities. That means every time you book a wine, you mark a wine as being your favorite, you basically are doing an activity on the site. And all these activities influence how popular the wine is on the site. So when you go to Adega and you search for top red wines from Portugal, they're not ordered by rating, they're ordered by this popularity thing. So we're not trying to say that that wine is better than the other, we're just saying that it's popular. Then you can taste it and see if it's really that good, like you think it is. And all this information is being created by a community that spends a lot of time online trying to add their notes and waiting for comments from other people. Our top user is a guy that can spend 2 weeks without going to the site, and then suddenly in a day adds 50 tasting notes from wines he's been tasting in the last 2 weeks. So it's crazy activity, and then everyone is adding their comments and having a conversation about the wines that he's tasting. Talking a little bit about the social commerce part and more of the commerce part, and where do we try to monetize what we're doing on the network, and how this is influencing also the way people buy wines. We've basically created a few products. One is called dynamic wine labels, and it's a way for wineries to be able to help their consumers get access to opinions from other people. So basically using this technology, this is an intersection of 3 technologies. Basically you have Adega, you have the EWBC, the unique code that I just explained, and you have these QR codes, which is a very popular kind of technology that you can use mobile phones to work with. So you just read this code with a mobile phone, and you are automatically redirected to a page where you can read all sorts of information about this specific bottle of wine. We have a few bottles of wine out there, so if you want to check out the codes and see how they work, go ahead. The other thing that we're doing, and this is a social network, and this is not just for consumers. We want wineries to participate and to have an active voice on how they promote their wines. So basically every winery on the site has a profile page, just like any of us, and again on Facebook. And they can do all sorts of things there. They can do just an about page or bio. They can do all sorts of information. But they can also use this account to participate actively on the discussion on the site. So if someone is commenting on your wines, you can go there and say, thank you for the note, or you can say, would you like to try this at a different temperature? Whatever information you think is relevant to make that experience more interesting. Something quite recent that we decided to do was we don't want to be a wine shop. It's not our goal to be a wine shop, but we thought that doing wine sales could be an interesting way of promoting wine. A lot of wineries offer samples and hope for people to comment on those samples. And we've created this model where every 2 weeks we have one wine in a promotion on a site, and we only sell that wine for a specific promotional price and only for a small quantity. So, and this is a way to get the conversation from the community focused on one single wine. So during that period, there's a lot of comments, a lot of activity around this wine. Not only raising the popularity of the wine, but it's also something that, you know, it stays forever on the site. It's not hidden. So next time you visit the wine that has been on the selection, the wine is going to have a lot more information that it would normally have from another wine. Then using, basically we developed this platform for wine, and we developed this software that allows people to have wine lists and to share wines with each other. And so recently we've also developed another product that helps if you're organizing a wine event, if you need a list to be online and for people to comment on the wines, then you can use the EWBC wine list to build your own wine list on your site. So people can interact with all the wines that are going to be at your event, but exactly on your site. Interestingly, what happened at EWBC, Ryan invited us to do a wine list for the conference. And not only do we have a browser version, we also have a mobile-ready version. And I changed my presentation yesterday because as we were doing Naked Wines tasting yesterday, 50 tasting notes were written live on the site. So they were being updated live. People were writing and updating the site as they were tasting the wines here. And this was, you know, an hour of tasting, and we got 50 tasting notes. And now what's happening on the days after the tasting is that people are going back there and commenting and say, oh, I didn't think of that wine, and, you know, just having the conversation that I mentioned before. We believe that working with wine doesn't work just online. You need to have an extension of the offline, not only or the online. Not only you need to drink, that's, you know, in the end, that's what you want to do, and producers wants to sell. So what we need to do is, what we did here is we created a thing called the EWBC Wine Market, which is a physical event that not only allows us to show the technologies that we've been developing, but it's also a great opportunity for producers who've been meeting people online and creating all these fans on the network to meet these fans face to face. And what we've seen is that after people meet the producers face to face, they go back to the site and they add even more comments and even more tasting notes around this, the producer profile. So it's an interesting way to not only to sell wine, of course, because this is a tasting event with a shop in the end, but it's also a way to make sure that the social network is not just all about the digital, it's also about the extension of that. Well, thank you for listening. Me and my partners are going to stay at the conference, the whole conference, and even the post trips. So if you have any questions, just come and talk to us.
Good morning. Naked Wines. We sell wine cheap. This is nothing new. Selling wine cheap is as old as wine itself. So what we are, we're an online wine market. And what we do is we get wine drinkers, like these people, to invest, not just to buy, but to invest in good-looking independent winemakers, like this man over here, Jock Harvey. And in return, what they get is preferential prices. So what we try to do is create a virtuous circle where the consumer gives us money, that enables the wine producer to sell wine at a lower price and remain competitive, and in return, the consumer gets a better wine for less money. Okay, nice simple idea. How does it work? It works like this. We sell wine at any point from being in the warehouse up here, all the way back through to up to a year in advance on the vine. And as you can see, just like with a budget airline, the earlier you buy the wine, the cheaper it is. Anyone who's flown in a budget airline, nobody in their right mind would turn up at the airport and ask for an air ticket. That would be very expensive. But the earlier you buy, the cheaper it is. And it's exactly the same with wine. And that's not a marketing gimmick. It's actually true, because the earlier you buy the wine, the more cost you can eliminate. Wine accumulates cost all the way through the production cycle. And the biggest hikes tend to be where you stick it in the bottle and when you move it. The actual cost of producing wine, as we all know in this room, is a relatively small part of the process. So we get people's money in advance, we hand it over to the winemaker, that reduces their costs, the customer gets a saving. That's not very different, is it? Because people have been selling wine cheaply for a long time. There's one huge difference with us, which is at a time when the wine industry is in crisis, there are good producers who are having to pull out vines because they can't make money out of them. Our producers are doing very nicely. And the reason for that, the reason that this works, is because of the economics of wine. For those of you in the UK, you'll be familiar with this. For those of you who are not, only 30p of the price of a bottle of wine in the UK actually goes on wine. There's a huge chunk of taxes, which, you know, like death, we can't do anything about, so there's no point worrying too much about those. But there is a big chunk of dead money. This is the cost of selling, the cost of logistics, finance, storage, bad debts, everything else. And that leaves very little money over for the stuff that actually goes in the bottle. So our philosophy is, by getting customers to pay in advance, we are helping to eliminate these costs here, all the stuff you can't taste, and that leaves more money there for all the stuff you can taste. So what's the magic ingredient? We have an awful lot of people trusting us with their money. They're buying wines, by definition, they've never tried before. In many cases, these wines never existed before we came along. The reason that they trust us is because we are naked. And what I mean by naked is that we take the exposure to the customer, we take transparency way past the point of discomfort. Okay? Practically, this is what it means. Everybody can rate wines on the site. That's not particularly new, but in comparison to at least one other website in the UK, we don't edit ours. We leave up the good and the bad. And the interesting thing is that, well, our belief is that the consumers actually trust the recommendations more because they can see good and bad. If all they see is good, actually they become cynical. We give everybody the opportunity to say whether they would buy this wine again, and we give a rating. We also tell people whether the wine is good value or not. And the more cynical amongst you will think that all wines on our site must be good value by definition. But we've got some wines that aren't. So for example, we've got a Chateau Neuf, very nice, but it's 25 quid. We have another wine made with very similar grapes from about 2 miles down the road, which is 7, which gets higher ratings than the Chateau Neuf. So if you went to this little bar over here for that wine, it would say this wine is not good value. It's not a subjective assessment from us. It's an algorithm that looks at the rating and the price, and will link you to the wine which is similar but cheaper with better ratings. Okay? Now you may say, well, it's stupid to be telling people who want to buy a £25 wine that they should buy a £7 wine instead. But the reason it works is because those people come back again, again, and again. People get much more pleasure from discovering something they wouldn't have tried otherwise, especially when they think they've saved some money along the way. Our customers choose the wines. We call our customers angels because they're investors, and we call our super users archangels. Eve mentioned the 99-1 principle. Ours is actually 56-44. 44% of all of our customers have interacted with us in some way, and 16% of them have done a detailed rating. Out of that 16%, we pick a small group of about 200 customers we call archangels. These are our super users who get on the site, edit, contribute. We actually take them along to tastings and get them to pick the wines for us. We also get them to price the wines for us. So we always put the wine to the samples to the customers before we sell them to say, what do you think? What would you be prepared to pay for this wine? And if the customer's perception of the wine is it's not worth the price we need to charge, then that's a very good reason we need to question ourselves as to whether we're going to sell it or not. Lots of sites will tell you, if you like this, you like that. We do one other thing, which is we tell you the wines not to buy. So the philosophy is we want to save our customers money, we want to give them value. One way we can give them value is to make sure that all 12 bottles in the case are bottles they're going to like. If there's one bottle in there, even if it's cheap and you don't like it, you've wasted all that money. So by telling people, if they come along to the site and say, I didn't like this wine, we put a red cross like that next to all the other wines that are similar that they also won't like. Okay? And it's not done by region or by grape, it's done by flavor profile. So if you came along to us and said, I don't like oaky Australian Chardonnays, then we would, for example, stop you buying an Argentinian Chenin that has spent a lot of time in oak. And it's an early start, but we seem to be getting the buy-in from the customers, we seem to be getting the buy-in from the producers, and we feel like the ball is starting to roll. So I think so far it is. And finally, something about innovation in here. And I think anybody who's in this room who's using the internet with wine, you've got an amazing opportunity, because this isn't, all these ideas are not the work of one person or even a small group of people. We just have a philosophy in the company where anybody can suggest anything, and they really do. And this isn't like a normal suggestion box which sits on top of a waste paper bin that just goes straight through. Anybody in the company can suggest anything, and then we don't talk about it. We just prototype. We take any ideas that we think have got some meat to them, we share them with our best customers, our archangels, and we build them. And if it works, we keep it. If it doesn't work, we quietly dump it, get rid of it, and occasionally we have to go back to a small group of consumers and say, I'm very sorry that we asked you to interact in this way, and now we're going to cancel it. But normally a case of wine, everybody's happy, and the most frequent users get used to the rate of change on the site and the rate at which new things are happening. And staff can, like I said, anyone in the company who has got the willingness to prototype can get their idea in front of people. And in the end, what this means is that we can be daring. And I've worked in a direct marketing business, for example, which was mail order. And actually what you landed up seeing the whole time was everything starts looking the same, because the risks of getting one mailing wrong are so high. The great thing with online, you can take so many chances, you can try so many new things. And I think to be daring and safe is an opportunity that we have in this room. And that means we can keep innovating. And that's why 12 of us left our jobs 2 years ago to set this business up. Thank you very much. Just very quickly, Derek, is the advanced booking live? Thanks.
Thank you, Rowan. I think that we've seen by the presentation, all three of them, that the wine branch is changing from, for a long time, it's no longer been production driven. It's not driven by sales anymore. It's becoming much more democratized, and the wine industry is more than it ever was before consumer driven. I think an important question for our panel would be, where do we as bloggers come into this new formula? What will this bring?
Personally, I think that the best opportunity for bloggers is the one thing bloggers can do that traditional media can't, is the long tail. We heard Ellen yesterday talking about traditional wine journalists and how there's a very limited number of wines that they can cover, and traditional media typically want wines covered that are mainstream, easily available. And there's so many talented winemakers out there who simply don't get the light of day, and I think the blogging community is the ideal channel to shine the light of publicity on those people.
Being a Dega technology company, one of the things we have developed to integrate what wine bloggers are doing is, if you go to a wine profile on Adega, not only you can see reviews and all the other opinions on the site, but we also link to all the bloggers who have mentioned their wine on their site. So we have no problem that people leave our site and go visit someone else's site if that site has value that is going to allow them to make a better choice when choosing another wine. Also, because we're using this technology of the Avian, for the bloggers that used Yavin on their posts, were able to say specifically that one post or one article on a magazine or but as long as it is online, we can say precisely that that blog post has mentioned a specific wine. So using that, we're able to provide a much better experience to whoever comes to our site searching for information about a specific wine. So yes, wine bloggers is, it's really relevant, that type of information, but they should definitely not think about their site as the only one on the network. It's just an island, and it needs to be connected. So it needs to be involved in all these other sites to be able to be found.
Not having an e-commerce site, I think that what I notice very often, and here I'm more talking to the wine producers, a lot of wine producers have blogs. And most of the times they will blog about their harvest, they will blog about what's happening in their region or in their property, but they won't connect to the e-tailers. And I think it might be something that could be interesting, because one of the very numerous questions that I get when I communicate on a wine is, where can I buy it? I don't have the answer. I'm not in e-commerce, I'm not an agent, I'm not a sales agent. So if wine producers are not connecting to the people who have, they have access to those channels. And I think that may be something that wine producers should be more aware of, and they should communicate on their site. They should know their distributors, and especially their online distributors. So please engage with those people, and engage with the people who are nice enough to write on your wines, who are nice enough to say, well, I really enjoy this wine. So I think there is, it's a conversation. It's not only consumers, retailers. It's consumers, producers, producers to consumers, and producers to retailers. And I think that's very important.
Damien, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say, all of us in this room, even those who are just fairly new to the technology, we're really at the pinnacle of the adoption of this sort of media and this innovation. How do we encourage the wine sector, who in general are at the bottom? These are the people who don't have the technology, and they have to be able to write or to communicate with us at the same time as being able to attract the consumers, as such as you've done, Rowan. I mean, could you just comment on that particular issue?
Well, the best way to encourage people, wine producers, to interact is by showing them what it does to sales. And we give our producers a chart showing how the ones who interact the most get the most sales. And, by definition, if we're dealing with independent producers, these people are not salesmen by nature. They are people who like to get their hands dirty and like to be in the cellar. But once we've got them over the hump, that it doesn't need to be Shakespeare. The English doesn't need to be perfect. People aren't looking for prose. They're looking for authenticity. You can get them slowly starting to interact. And once they've got used to the idea that the wines, that they're getting direct feedback, not from a wine buyer, not filtered through a panel, but from the people who are actually drinking their wine, most of them actually relish it and really enjoy it.
Yeah, I think this interaction with the consumer, it has it's a built-in marketing